would face to face with the devil inside him. He founded the first world religion, followed today by over 400 million people. And the events of his life make up one of the greatest stories ever told, and the Buddha, the world's most enduring icon. 2,500 years ago, northern India was divided up into kingdoms and republics. The Buddha's father, Suddhodana, was the elected chieftain of the Shakya tribe. He ruled his kingdom from his palace near the foothills of the Himalayas. His queen was called Maya. Legend tells that on the night of the full moon, she had an extraordinary dream. It told that a special being known as the Buddha was about to be born again on Earth. The Buddha would be born of Maya. The baby boy was named Siddhartha, meaning every wish fulfilled. But his mother fell ill after giving birth and died a few days later. Siddhartha was brought up by his aunt. The family summoned Brahmin priests and then a trusted palace soothsayer to predict the young prince's future. We're told that he noticed the auspicious signs of a great being upon Siddhartha's body, including the mark of a wheel upon his feet. Everyone knew the signs meant Siddhartha was exceptional, especially the king. But as he watched his inquisitive young son growing up, he worried about these predictions, that one day his son would abandon the palace and become a spiritual leader rather than stay to become chief of the Shakyas. As Siddhartha grew up, his father did all he could to tempt him to stay inside the palace. He tried to create a perfect and seductive world for him to live in. When Siddhartha reached the age of 16, the king even found him a beautiful bride, Princess Yasodhara. Siddhartha had to compete for her hand, and the king was delighted how skillfully his son fought off the competition. The king began to convince himself that palace life was beginning to suit his son at last. But this was wishful thinking, and Siddhartha pestered his father to allow him out of the palace. With the naivety of a child, he set out with Channa, his charioteer, as his guide. On his first trip, Siddhartha went out into the country, away from his father's influence. He noticed an old man painfully making his way through a village. He asked Channa what was wrong with the man, and Channa explained the process of aging to him. The second sign was soon to follow, when Siddhartha noticed a sick man, his features twisted with disease. He asked Channa if anyone could become sick, and again he was shocked when he learned the brutal truth that we all can. Now he saw a corpse bound in linen being carried to the funeral pyre. And the story records that Siddhartha is appalled to discover not only that all men are mortal, but also that it was a Brahmin belief that after death we are all reborn, to suffer and die, time and time again. But it was the fourth sign that would definitively point to Siddhartha's future. A man wearing a simple robe with a begging bowl before him. Why should anyone want to give up the pleasures of the world to wander the countryside begging? Asked the prince. Channa explained that the man had renounced such pleasures in order to confront reality and seek answers to this painful existence. When Siddhartha returned to the palace after this fourth journey, his mind was reeling with his new understanding of the world. His wife had just given birth to a beautiful child, but they would both one day grow old, become ill and die. It was inevitable. He had learnt the meaning of impermanence and saw it in everything around him. Siddhartha knew he had to leave his family to seek answers to the questions that tormented him, even though this meant abandoning his wife and son. Against the tradition of his family and the Brahmin religion, Siddhartha left home to find his own answers to life's suffering. It is said that beside the river Anoma, he removed his jewelry, exchanged his robes for rags, and cut off his long hair. Siddhartha traveled further on his search into northern India. He was looking for an alternative way of life that attempted to overcome the suffering he'd seen around him. He was interested in all the new philosophies, but he wanted to go further, to reach deeper into his mind. He now decided to focus on the technique of meditation and sought out the leading gurus of the day. Siddhartha tried to achieve this state of liberation. He fasted for so long, his life hung by a thread. All my limbs became like the knotted joints of withered creepers, my buttocks like a bullock's hoof, my protruding backbone like a string of balls, my gaunt ribs like the crazy rafters of a tumble-down shed. My eyes lay deep in their sockets, their pupils sparkling like water in a deep well. As an unripe gourd shrivels and shrinks in the hot wind, so became my scalp. Just as Siddhartha was about to die of starvation, a young girl saved his life by giving him a bowl of rice and milk.